Greetings. My name is Caramel Soldier and I'm a creative entrepreneur. My brand ethos is to own your stripes in everything you do, which the first stripe is to know thyself. The second stripe is to be interdependent, and the third is always do things with progression in mind. My core values are health, which is holistic well-being, energy and spirit, which is the connection to a bigger force, and creativity, which is based on inspiration and empowerment. So as a creative entrepreneur, my endeavors have ranged from being a backup dancer for Whitney Houston at the European Music Awards in Barcelona, stage and company manager for Angie Lamar stage production Take Me Back, and quite recently I am a creative founder of a developing immersive social dance startup entitled Heart Dance in XR. And I am passionate about providing inner peace and joy to people through my creative endeavors. And what I mean by that is, or why is, when you have inner peace and joy, it's very contagious. And so that makes the environment and the people that you're around a lot better to be amongst. And then you can also, again, going back to my stripes, have progression. So with all that said, this is how I started the Become Talks card business. So it started on offline. So it's a series of talks that we were holding, talking about all different types of topics, but from an African and its diaspora's point of view. And then again, how we can move forward progressively with the conversations that we've had on whatever topic that was. When lockdown happened, we decided to move those talks online to create a space for people to just check in, discuss anything that was on their mind, and basically how other people were surviving in that lockdown period. So these talks took place for twice a week for 2 hours minimum, and they actually went on for a whole year and a half. So by the end of it, we had a lot of resources and feedback with these conversations that we recorded. And we were able to, throughout that year and a half, develop and refine a unique structure to approach progressive conversations while building up a vast catalogue of resources and tools to refer back to. When lockdown ended, the feedback from everybody was that they really enjoyed the sessions online, but now they've had to go back to work, etc. It's hard for them to keep coming. So if there was any way that we could, revamp these conversations or adapt them. So that took me on a mission to see how I could encapsulate and even replicate the talks online to then be able to give to people as a product or a service that they can then hold safe spaces to have their own conversations with their own communities, units, family, etc., to keep that mission of normalizing conversations around what was going on. Because what we were finding in the talks was that we weren't speaking as units or as a community with certain topics. We just didn't have those conversations, which was causing things like trauma, and finding out what our triggers were within that. So 3 months later, I produced and designed Become Talk cards. They're discussion cards with 120 thought-provoking questions that are around the 4 main themes of health, wealth, relationship, and identity. And they're for the community or families and or self-reflection. And alongside with that, with the product, we also facilitate a service of workshops in how to, one, maybe use the cards, or to help moderate a specific conversation or topic with the cards. So this is what's in the cards or the deck. So there are 6 info cards, house rules and facilitator tools that help you start your conversation and also set up the space so it's nice and safe. Then there's 4 themes, which I spoke about, which was health, wealth, relationship, and identity. And within those themes, you have 10 topics. And then within those topics, within that theme, you have 3 questions. So that makes up your 120 questions. And then I like to call it the unique selling point. You have 10 breaker cards, which are suggestions to break, relieve tension, or warm up or down the atmosphere. So, you know, to start, you can ice break using the breaker cards. You can break up a situation if it gets a bit heated. And then the most important one is to use the breaker cards to close a situation or a conversation, so people feel safe enough again to come back into the space and talk some more. So is it an example here of how I use, or how we can use the cards, but because of time, I'm not going to go through it, but it's there. There's 5 steps, but it's basically just being able to set up your space, then have choose a question, make some notes on that question, because the cards are also solution driven. So you want to make sure that you're not just having a conversation, you are moving forward with the next step of, okay, cool, we've had that conversation, I've learned this, and this is how I'm either going to prevent it or thrive from it, etc., etc. So products and service benefits. For me, I would say that the product side of it, the benefits are, it helps you facilitate setting up safe spaces to have conversations. It can enlighten you with the different facilitator cards that are in there of how you can hold a conversation. So one of the great examples, or my favorites, is the Indian talking stick method, where the person holding the stick, as it were, they're the only one that can speak in that conversation, but they don't pass the stick on until they felt like they've been understood by everybody in that room or the conversation. So these are different methods of how you can approach a conversation to get the best out of what you're speaking about. And then obviously the deck, it can be played as a game. So you could do it as a games night or a dinner night. So they're great icebreakers and a starter tool to approach these difficult conversations as well. And then the service side of it, the benefits are that it's each one teach one kind of thing, where we provide workshops where you can learn, or we can do focus groups of how you can really utilize the cards in different ways and with different age groups, etc., etc. So where are we now? We have a product. The decks, they're on sale. We have an outlet where you can purchase them. And in the service side of things, we are facilitating workshops. So on the screen is an event held by two cousins, and their event's called Sisters Talk About. And they had me along to talk about the cards to their audience. And then we did an actual session where we used the cards, and I asked them questions, which was really, really fun. So we're doing events at this moment in time. Also, we've gone into South Bank colleges and held workshops there with certain youths, speaking about certain questions from the pack that pertain to an event. It was an entrepreneur's event. So the cards were used with that. And we're currently in discussions with the US Embassy in their diversity department of how we could possibly facilitate the cards with a session with their company. So where are we going? Right, this is my vision so far. This quote is always in the back of my mind. Until the lion learns to write, every story always glorifies the hunter. And as our community, what we found out from the online talks, that we don't really speak about certain situations, so therefore we don't have a voice, and therefore somebody else always writes about our data or our situation, which aren't a good representation of us. So by having these cards and not starting to normalize the conversation, we can then start writing our own story. So down at the bottom here, these are my sub goals, as it were, to being able to find our voice, to help others find theirs, so then we can write our own stories, which is, the first one is to get the cards in 1 million households within the UK. Pray for me. The second one is to have a lot more media outlets in regards to the cards. So like a podcast and maybe a YouTube channel, interviewing certain leaders maybe, or specific personnel that can enhance or give different advices or opinions of how to approach certain situations or questions that have come from the cards. Community events, there are 3 that I really would like to do, which are Where's Your Head At, which is open events like what you saw on with Sisters talk about. So just getting the community knowing about or talking about these conversations on health, wealth, relationship and identity. Meet Your Parents, which will be an intergenerational event with the cards, and having grandparents speak to grandchildren and aunties and da, 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 da. So again, we start opening up dialogue and really understanding where everybody's coming from. And the third one would be to normalize the conversations. And that will be more focus group based, where people can come in to learn how to facilitate using the cards amongst their own groups. So group leaders, church leaders, etc., etc. And then a blog, which I'm calling the Conversation Catcher, which will be us documenting our resources of how we would approach the questions asked within the cards. So we start documenting and telling our own story. So, in conclusion, we believe in creating safe spaces to communicate within the home, families, communities, and ourselves, and these cards are designed to facilitate that. On the other side of difficult conversations lies resilience, truth, connection, and deeper understanding of self and others. So, let's talk. If you know anybody or you're interested in yourself that would like to get the cards or have a conversation with me to either facilitate a workshop or an event, I would love to hear your feedback also in what you've heard and what you think about the cards. So the outlet, you can get the cards at Pockets of Space, www.pocketsofspace.co.uk.